Hello and welcome to Theology on Tap. Today I want to talk about something serious. I want to talk about abortion. It seems that every time there is a presidential election, the topic of abortion gets really heated up. And there are those of us who are pro-life and those who are pro-choice. And these two sides don't really seem to get along. They don't like each other. This whole idea of two opposing positions, ideas that clashes all the time, I personally don't like that. Why can't we just find a middle ground or an understanding of each other? Instead of fighting, that we could have a nice discussion, agree to disagree, and see what happens, we just think that somehow making a policy is going to change everything and correct things and everybody will just get along, but that's not true, because when you have opposing ideas and one side wins, the other one's going to be very unhappy. So if Donald Trump becomes the president, then the Democrats are going to be very unhappy. There might be even riots in the streets. And if Hillary wins and Trump, people is going to be very upset, and there might be riots in the streets. I don't like this dualism understanding. And even as a Christian, there's a view of heaven and hell. There's a view of good and evil. There is those of us who believe in Jesus Christ are saved, and those who do not believe in Jesus are condemned to hell forever. This opposing ideas. I don't like that because I don't really see it in Scripture. I think it's very clear that God created all things, and we're supposed to be in this world together and get along in peace and love and whatnot. So I don't like this opposing ideas are already trying to convince each other who's right and wrong, because somebody's always going to lose. Nobody's going to be happy when that happens. So what I want to do today is that if we're going to talk about abortion, we need to put flesh and blood into this whole circumstances. It's not just about reading about what is right and wrong. It's not about, when, human life begins, right? It's not about, is it right in the first trimester, second trimester? It's not. Those are the issues that people argue about. But if we put flesh and blood into this, and we put human beings who are going through the circumstances, then maybe we'll get along better. For me, I was born in South Korea, and when my mother was pregnant with me, she went to see a doctor to have me aborted. Now, I don't know why she told me this many times. She would remind me a lot of times. But I'm glad that she didn't get an abortion, obviously, because I'm here. I'm pretty happily married. I love my family. Just to think that, my kids wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. A lot of people who are blessed to know me, their life definitely would not be as fun, I think. And definitely my wife would be married to someone else, whoever that might be. And life would be so different. The world would be totally different. I'm so glad that my mother didn't get an abortion. But, you have to wonder, what was going through my mother's mind when she went to see the doctor to have me aborted. What was she so scared of? I know that the Korean War ended about 10 years prior to that I was born, so maybe it has something to do with it. Economy. I don't know, but it must have been so painful for her. It had to be painful. And the guilt that she was going through, because, why would she tell me so many times that she could have made a big mistake if she were to have me aborted? Why would she tell me that so much unless there was something in her mind that would just keep reminding her all the time? It must have been very difficult. When I was a youth leader at a church many years ago, I got a phone call from this guy that said, his girlfriend is passed out and looked like she was overdosing or something. So I went over and took her to the hospital. It turned out that she would overdose on prescription drugs, and she wanted to kill herself. So she wanted to commit suicide. They were able to save her life, so I'm really glad about that. But what was she going through in life? So when I took her to a psychologist and we had a conversation, and what she said was obvious, like typical things, like I didn't get along with my parents and whatnot. But one of the things that she was going through that was so painful for her was that she had an abortion. And she was only 16 at the time. So, and the idea of abortion, that she had an abortion, that somehow she got rid of a human being that weighed a little too much in her mind, and the guilt and the shame that was there, that she just simply wanted to take her life. I mean, that's tragic, isn't it? You know, what goes in through people's mind when they're committing suicide? That's got to be so difficult. So, you know, I don't know if I have a solution to abortion or not, but I think the way that we as Christians and as a society, the way we deal with this issue, not just abortion, but any issue, it's not working. And we have to admit that it's not working. So there are a few things that I think that needs to be changed. And the first thing that I believe that needs to change is abortions are going to happen whether you like it or not. Like I said many times, I'm from South Korea. In our culture, abortion was not that big of a deal, you know. Back in the early 80s to mid 80s, I remember reading a statistics about Korean American teenagers who got pregnant, and over 90% of them had an abortion because we didn't think of it as murder. We saw it as something that was necessary. So one of the first things that we got to do is stop calling it murder, please. Right? I mean, you could think that it is murder if you want to, but seriously, are you going to let these young people who are going through such, I don't know, have to be going through so much in their life, not knowing what to do, not getting the support they need to raise a child, so they don't know what to do, so they get their baby aborted? Do you want that guilt in their mind for the rest of their life that they actually murder their babies? Can you imagine that for the rest of your life? You know what we're doing to people, in my opinion, is wrong. There is a huge difference between murder and killing. And when you call it murder, then people who are performing murder too, like the doctors, we need to take care of them, right? Get rid of them. And I think that's why sometimes there are people who do attack, right, free clinics that are performing abortions, because we got to get rid of these doctors who are murderers. And so the thing that we got to do first is, we shouldn't call it murder. Definitely not. So what I suggest as Christians basically is that we need to be honest, talk to one another. Is there such thing as a solution? I don't think so. But we need to have an open, honest conversation about, not just about abortion, about sex, about life. You know, I understand that the best case scenario is that, you know, we don't have sex until we get married, right? But it doesn't work. So when we have programs like abstinence programs, we're encouraging young women not to have sex. What we know now is that it doesn't work. So why not, instead of just having a program like that and giving purity rings, and even them too, can you imagine making a promise to God with the purity ring thing, that they're not going to have sex until they're married, but they have sex? I mean, just imagine the guilt that we're putting into young people's mind. It's totally wrong. So I think maybe church should have other programs such as safe sex classes, teach them about contraception, how to put on rubbers or options. If it's not just abortion, but adoption, carrying a child. I even met a girl who was pregnant. She was a teenager, and she introduced me to a church couple who was ready to adopt a child when she gave birth. That's a community coming together to help one another out, and I think maybe that's the best way to go. You know, if we look at the scripture of how Jesus dealt with issues in life, such as adultery, he went up to a woman that committed adultery, and the thing he said to her was, I don't condemn you. So instead of putting guilt into people's mind and saying you had done something wrong, what we should do is learn from Jesus Christ and do things what he would do, which is accept, not condemning, not judging, and to spread the love of God around. Help people. Build a community. And if you could just do that, who knows what could happen, right? A little bit of more love, grace, goodness, a little bit more of that. Maybe that would raise the values of human beings so that less people would need to get abortion. And more doctors will not want to perform the surgery. You know, so that's what we need to do as Christians, in my opinion. Maybe that would be the best way to go. I remember reading an article about a woman who was raped and got pregnant, and she decided to keep the child. Because out of a horrible thing in life that was done to her, something beautiful and wonderful thing was about to happen. Right? To me, that's value. Life. And if we could spread that kind of love and grace, then who knows what could happen. We don't have to have a side to say what's right and wrong. We could just love one another, right? Accept one another, and then we'll see what happens. Trust in the Lord, and we'll see what happens. Allow the Spirit to move in our lives and see what happens. We don't control it, because the more we try to control what is right and wrong, the more things that get screwed up. Right? Trust in God. That's what I think should happen. So I don't know. What do you think? Leave a comment below if you have any solution. If you like this video, please like this video and share. And keep coming back because I got a lot more to come. See you next time.